Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, a technical and a bilingual point. Thanks to Romy, Paola, Galia, and Sergio, this program is being simultaneously translated into Spanish. So if you would like to hear this in Spanish, please click on the globe icon on the bottom right of your screen and select Spanish. Este programa será traducido simultáneamente al español, así es que por favor, si quieren oír el programa en español, tomen un momento, hagan clic abajo a la derecha de su pantalla en el icono del globo terráqueo y escojan español. Throughout the program, we'll also be taking questions and through the question and answer chat box. So please, as we go along, enter your questions there. And with that, let's begin. Good afternoon, buenas tardes. Thank you for being with us today. I'm Gabriela Domenzain, the Communications Director for the Center for Immigration Law and Policy here at UCLA Law. And on behalf of CILP's co-directors, Hiroshi and Ahilan, and the entire CILP team, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of our fall conference, The Road Ahead in Immigration Law, What Can the President Do? This is the first of 3 sessions we'll be holding, so please make sure to sign up for our Friday conversations, which should be appearing in the chat right now. Thank you, Chloe. You know, when we planned this conference, we thought that by this point, advocates might have pushed Congress to deliver a path to citizenship for millions of undocumented residents, that the administration would have already ended the Remain in Mexico policy and the Title 42 programs, and really that overall the Biden administration's policies would be more aligned with what immigrants and their advocates wanted. But the Biden administration has now had 9 months to act on immigration. And not only has it seemed incapable of pushing Congress to vote for a path to citizenship, but the Biden administration has chosen to maintain and defend many of the Trump administration's policies, in particular, those concerning asylum seekers at the border. So the question we ask today, what can the president do, is all the more pressing. Our opening panel features 4 of the most prominent immigrant leaders in this country. And I have the distinct pleasure of introducing one of them, your host for this conversation, Univision National Network Anchor, Jorge Ramos. Every day, for over 30 years, millions of homes in this country do one thing. They turn the TV on to watch Jorge Ramos at 6:30 p.m. on Univision National Network's Noticiero Univision. His audience knows him, they trust him, they know he'll get to the point, al punto, and he has been reporting on the plight of immigrants and providing them for a platform to be heard for his whole life. He has won 10 Emmy Awards, been included in Time magazine's list of the world's most influential people, and frankly, on immigration, Jorge has served as the fourth estate, challenging those in power to tell the truth at every turn. And today, he'll speak to 3 immigrants' rights leaders about the moment we find ourselves in, how we got here, and what lies ahead. Jorge knows them well because he's been interviewing them since before they became the national leaders that they are. Erika Andiola started as a dreamer organizer in Arizona in college and is now the chief advocacy officer of RAICES, Texas. Cristina Jiménez Moreta started as a dreamer organizer in New York and co-founded United We Dream. And Lorella Praeli started as a dreamer organizer in Connecticut and is now the co-president of Community Change Action. They lead national immigrant rights efforts, and we're so lucky to have them and Jorge with us today. So Jorge, thank you so much. Gracias por estar con nosotros. I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. Gracias, Gabriela. And thank you all for this wonderful invitation. And this is what I have in mind. At the end of this conversation, I hope that if President Biden is watching, or Vice President Kamala Harris is watching, or their advisors, that they are going to be able to say, this is what these 3 leaders are recommending to do on immigration. We haven't been able to do much since 1986. Let's explore it. So at the end, hopefully, we'll have something to give to them. So Lorella, Cristina, Erika, thank you so much for being here with me. So I just want to make sure that, there you are. Hola, Lorella. let me just make sure that Erika and Cristina are here.
Aquí
All right.
estamos.
Perfecto, muy bien, las tres. So this is what I have in mind when we were thinking about Latino leaders decades ago. Of course, it was Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. And a few years later, then it was many members of Congress, young members of Congress, that took the leadership of the Hispanic community. But when I think of the present leadership of Latinos, honestly, I'm not thinking in Congress or Latino leaders in Congress. I'm thinking of the three of you. So it's a lot of pressure, but at the end of this conversation, I hope that you can tell us what can we do, because that's what leaders are for. So let me just take you back for a few minutes, and then we'll start thinking about the present and the future. Cristina, let me start with you. I still remember when President Obama used to say that he was not an emperor and he was not a king, that he couldn't provide citizenship for 11 million, and that he couldn't do anything for the dreamers. And then you and Lorella and Erika, you forced him to change his mind. Take me back, Cristina, to that moment. How do you do it?
Well, it's so wonderful to be in conversation with you, Jorge, and with all the audience that is engaging in this conversation, especially as immigration is in the discussions and conversations in Washington, D.C. So like taking us back, Jorge, I will say that some of the things that I think are important for me are some of the lessons that are relevant for our conversation of the moment that we are in, because I think what's important to think about is that before we even got to the moment when President Obama was elected, our movement had been organizing in states across the country. We were fighting against deportations. We were pushing states to allow us to go to college regardless of our undocumented status. And that happened perhaps in invisible ways, to the media and to the public, but the organizing was happening for many, many years before we got there. And the fight that we had to push for the DREAM Act in 2010 was a moment that allowed us to build the power we needed to force President Obama for DACA. What the DREAM Act fight in 2010 did is that all of a sudden, hundreds and hundreds of young people descended in Washington, D.C. and pushed members of Congress to vote on the DREAM Act when comprehensive immigration reform had stalled in Congress. And it was this push that really forced the parties to get on record. But also when the stories of undocumented young people and us pressuring members of Congress, regardless of party, to take action, really capture the imagination of the country and capture the media discourse. So I think that that's important because that was an important foundation for what happened next on the DACA campaign. When we didn't start fighting for DACA. What we wanted was a pathway to citizenship, and that continues to be the demand today. But in the moment when we realized the votes weren't there, the political conditions weren't there, we decided that it was a strategic move to force President Obama to take action. He had run on being a pro-immigrant on his election, committed to push for the DREAM Act. And we thought as we were going into an election year that was our leverage to push the administration. You are right. He said that he could not do this. In fact, we have many meetings with the White House legal counsel and with many people that used to work for the White House at that time who told us the same message. But we did not hear the no's. And we did not take a no for an answer. But what we did was to use all of the leverage of powers and strategies and tactics that we could to push the administration to give us deferred action for undocumented young people. And, the way that happened, it was really using a multi-set of tactics. I will lift up the leadership of lawyers like Hiroshi, who's playing an amazing leadership role now at the center, because we work with lawyers like Hiroshi to think about how can we bring the legal minds and the legal experts on immigration to actually counter the argument of the White House and tell them that, yes, they had the legal power to do it. And it was only a matter of political will of the president. At the same time that we were driving that legal strategy, we kept having meetings with the legal counsel, and we also brought our own legal counsel. And, Lorella played a big role in engaging other friend attorneys at the Yale Law School. Yep. And that was another strategy. So the inside and outside pressure was key to deliver to that victory. But we also had mobilizations in campaign offices of Obama, outside of the White House, and everywhere he went, we reminded him that he could do it. And this even included at a conference hosted by Unidos, at the time, the National Council of La Raza, where he gave a speech to the Latinx community. And we disrupted that speech to make the point that he could give us deferred action. And so all of that pressure led to that victory. And I think that the reason why I lifted all of these strategies and tactics is because we are in a similar moment where we're looking both at the White House and Congress, and we need to use all of the levers that we have to push for what communities deserve. And that is dignity. And we start there by having a pathway to citizenship.
Okay, I'll stop you there, Cristina, because we're going to go in just a moment on what to do. Lorella, what do you remember? Was there a moment when you think that you were able to change the mind of President Obama? What was that key moment? What did you do?
Ooh, that is such a good question. And just like your question alone, we could spend 5 hours on, the three of us on this chat. So, in this Zoom. So I also just want to say I'm so appreciative and so excited to be in conversation with Cristina and Erika and with you, Jorge, because I think in different ways we have helped to pave the way and we've not done it on our own. So just before I go into the moment, I want to say, I think what grounds us and what pulls all of us together is this deep belief that organizing makes the impossible or the perceived impossible possible. And that's really the story of how DACA happened. Despite and against all odds, it was smart and strategic. It took a lot of courage. It took going up against what people thought was possible in that time and forging new ways. I think about a lot of moments, but one moment that has stuck with me is a meeting with the president himself and other advocates. And, we walked into this meeting, and one of the things that I said was reminding him of a quote of A. Philip Randolph that he always used to use in his campaign, where he basically was telling the story of, go out and make me do it. It's a story about organizing, right? So it created this opening, like that was a key moment where like, we disagree. We happen to have a different assessment of what's possible here, and we are going to hold you to that. And it was just very clear. And we did not back down from that demand. And we turned on every lever. We pulled every lever that we had to build on what Cristina was sharing. The lawyers, the labor movement, the broader progressive movement, really thinking about how to build on deportation cases to show the American public. This played no small part to show the American public that, in fact, he was violating a promise that he had made. He was, in fact, deporting young undocumented people. And it also, just because I think we're in a similar moment and know we're going to go there, it was also a moment, there were a lot of moments of choice for us as young immigrant leaders in the space. Because we had to shift away from the strategy everyone else wanted to drive and to call sort of this moment of truth that meant we needed to go smaller in that moment. That shifted from a path to citizenship to administrative reform, administrative relief. And those were all very hard decisions that we had to deliberate over, that we had to deliberate on and make decisions about. all with the idea that these breakthroughs on immigration help us build power and they deliver tangible material change in people's lives. And that cannot be understated in this moment. So you can hold on, we can hold on and fight for a North Star as we also deliver concrete change in people's lives right now and do it in a way that increases the movement's power over time.
Gracias, Erika. So now I want to hear your point of view. You were in Arizona. You were doing something different too. How do you remember that? And was there a specific strategy, a shift in strategy, Erika, that you think it was important for the movement to be successful?
Yeah, well, look, in Arizona, around the same time, right? This is DACA happened in 2012. In 2010, for some of you who remember, Arizona signed SB 1070, which was this horrible anti-immigrant law that ended up being copied by other states, and all of a sudden you had this like epicenter of anti-immigrant sentiment, which was Arizona. That's where I grew up, and for me, right before I even got involved, I was probably in college. I don't know, just into my books and trying to graduate when Cristina was already, organizing, and Carlos Saavedra and Mohammed and like all these folks who I didn't even know. I was just a college student who was trying to graduate, and all of a sudden my scholarships were taken away. My house got raided by Joe Arpaio. I mean, all these things were happening at home, and I think because we were such an epicenter of anti-immigrant sentiment, that a lot of us in Arizona became big voices, right, in this movement. And I think, tying everything into what Cristina and Lorella were saying, I don't want to repeat anything because I completely agree. I do think that the key for me was that we had a lot of courage as young and undocumented people, right? And not just courage to say we're undocumented and unafraid, not just the courage to like go and sit at somebody's office knowing that you could get deported. I mean, that takes a lot of guts from somebody who's undocumented to just put yourself in that position, but also political courage, right? Like we were not in a position where we were thinking, oh God, if I say this, I'm not gonna get invited into that meeting, or if I make my allies a little angry, they're like, maybe they're not gonna talk to me anymore, right? Like we were just so centered in our struggle and what we really wanted to accomplish for our lives, right? And our families and ourselves, that we were willing to be courageous at a personal risk, like having a personal risk, a political risk, and imagine that being multiplied by the movement of people, right? That it wasn't just the three of us, but a movement of people who had that same spirit and that same passion to be able to, push someone who ran a pro-immigrant platform at the end of the day. And we were able to really move the public on an issue that before any of us came out of the shadows was something that people would never talk about, ourselves in that context of being human beings or being people who deserved anything. We were called illegal aliens and criminals. I mean, we still are, but I mean, even it was even worse. Probably Cristina, Lorella could tell you this. Even the way that the people would talk about me in front of me, is completely different than now. So I'll stop there, but I definitely would summarize it in lots of courage that we had as a young movement.
Absolutely, and the kind of leadership that the three of you and thousands of others showed really changed the president's mind. So we have only 30 minutes, and I'm going to push the three of you just to give me some answers. What can the president do? This is the background. This is the context. The pandemic, Title 42 is still on. The Remain in Mexico program is still on. Donald Trump was president for 4 years. We don't have 60 Democratic senators to change the law, and nothing really has been done since 1986. 11 million, 10 million are still waiting. President Biden has promised a lot. And then what do we do? And I need your answers. So Cristina, you can begin, and don't wait for me, Lorella and Erika, just jump in. So what can the president do? You're in front of the president, Cristina. as the same way you were in front of Obama, and then you say, Mr. President, what can you do?
Well, I think, Jorge, I will first say that I am very disappointed about how this administration has failed to live up to what he campaigned on. He, as the antithesis of Trump, Biden campaigned on of having a humane approach to immigration, and unfortunately, what we have seen has been the opposite. I think the world has seen the images of Haitian refugees being whipped by Border Patrol at the border, and the separations of families that remained, families that have not been reunited, and detention at the border, and not having the right to seek asylum, which is actually legal. So, I will start first by expressing the disappointment, but also pushing the administration to really live up to the promises that they made. What they can concretely do, Jorge, is get rid of the remaining Mexico program. They can also end Title 42 so that people can seek asylum. They can totally determine how they go about detention and deportation in this moment. And so really, the president can also issue a TPS for certain countries. So there's many ways in which the administration can take policies without approval from Congress to really live up to a more humane approach and promise that he made about immigration. I think the question, Jorge, it's what's the political will? And I have to wonder, what is it that this administration is thinking about, and who are they policing? Why are they policing white supremacists that were hard supporters of the Trump administration and its immigration agenda? What do they feel that they need to keep some of the Trump policies in place? Is it to please them? Is it fear of Republicans? Either reason, I think that what I will remind President Biden is that people that voted for him, and the majority of people in this country that voted for him, voted for a humane approach, voted for a president that could be bold and that can lead us into a completely different vision of a more inclusive country that works for all of us, including immigrants.
Okay, now, Lorella, I remember that we talked maybe about a month ago, maybe a couple of months ago, and you were very optimistic about the possibility of reconciliation. And then came the parliamentarian, she said twice no to that possibility. We have seen there's no political will to change the filibuster. So at some point you said that you shifted your strategy a decade ago. Can you shift that strategy again, and how would you do it?
Thank you, Jorge. I still feel optimistic. And it might be an unpopular thing to say today, but I really do believe in the discipline of hope. That hope is a discipline in the way that Mariam Kaba talks about it. And here's what I'm reminded of in this moment. Immigration was not a part of President Biden's Build Back Better agenda or his vision for a recovery. Straight up. We were not in the plan. We were not on the website. They said they were going to update it, and we just weren't a part of the Build Back Better agenda. We fought our way in, we organized our way into the agenda and into the possibility of being addressed in the reconciliation package. That is important today because, as you said, we don't have 60 votes in the Senate. But we do have majority. Democrats have majority of Congress, and a Democratic president sits in the Oval Office. And so we forced our way in. And then now all Democrats talk about getting immigration done via reconciliation. Kudos, great. I am glad that you're there, that you came along. And also, we've been very clear since the beginning of the year, we're not walking out of this year empty-handed. And so your question is like, what now when the parliamentarian who works at the pleasure of the majority leader, who happens to be the senator of New York, Chuck Schumer, she has issued an advisory opinion. So let me lay out, there's like a two-track strategy right now. One is there's a third plan that is going to be shopped with or presented to and argued with the parliamentarian. That will fall short of delivering or creating a new path to citizenship, but it would deliver significant protections and access to benefits and the ability to request permission to travel abroad to millions of people. That is active and live in this moment. 2, if the parliamentarian were to reject that, I think it's really important for the majority leader, for President Biden, for the Speaker of the House, who's also a Democrat, Pelosi, for them all to remember that we were not joking. We were not exaggerating when we said we're going to hold you to your promise. And so they can decide to ignore the advice of the parliamentarian at that point, because I think going a 3rd round with the parliamentarian will show whether or not she's just hostile to the issue of immigration. We actually reject her argument that this cannot happen via reconciliation. Now we need them to continue to press with her and to be ready to use their power to proceed by ignoring her ruling and deliver for people this year, understanding that there is no next year in Congress right now, like that this is the year and the moment. Now you said, 11 million people have been waiting, Jorge, for decades. And we feel that level of responsibility in this moment, grounded in the organizing that ordinary, everyday people are leading and have led to make this moment possible. And like, this is it. This is the year. And you can't just, Harry Reid, Senator, former majority leader and leader of the Democratic Party, Harry Reid came out with a very strong statement yesterday, and I want to bring that in here. He said, people will not care about procedural excuses. And that's really the best way to capture the moment that we're in and the expectation on our part for them to deliver.
Okay, so Erika, this is a question for you, but also I would like to know what Cristina and Lorella think about this. Should you work with President Biden, or should we rebel against him? Should you say you haven't delivered and use the same strategy, the same tactics that you used 10 years ago? Would that work? Some people might get the sense that everybody, the Latino community, is working with President Biden. But if that doesn't work, should we put a stop to it and say, no, this isn't working, this isn't what you promised, and then change the strategy, Erika?
Absolutely. We need leadership. We need leadership. Lorella just laid out all the tools, and there's probably even more tools, right? There is many ways in which the administration can deliver, right? And at this point, it's not that, the parliamentarian, look, we didn't elect the parliamentarian. She was not elected by the people. We elected President Biden. We elected Senator Schumer. People want them to deliver, and they should be the ones to be moving everything they can internally to be able to make this happen. Now, what can we do is we can hold our feet to the fire. We can ensure that we are making the momentum that we created when we were organizing around the DREAM Act, the momentum that we created when we were organizing around DACA, by organizing so that we can push them to actually take leadership. And look, okay, I worked for politicians, right? Like, I unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. Now I have that experience that I wanted to figure out a way to move things inside because nothing was working outside. So I went to work for Kirsten Sinema, who y'all know where she's at this point. Now my fault. I don't know what's going on there. Interview for another time. And for Bernie Sanders. And the reality is that I was able to see that, look, a lot of people can say many things, they can promise many things, but are they actually doing anything to move the needle? And I don't know if the president is doing anything to move the needle on immigration other than playing lip service. And so at this point, to your question, yes, we have to do everything right now to push the president to deliver on his promises, as well as Democrats who, look, they have been elected over and over again, many of them by the Latino community, by the Black community, by people of color. So now it's time to deliver.
My concern is this: are we in 2009 when Barack Obama was in the White House, and then when Democrats controlled both chambers of Congress? Of course, they had supermajority. They don't have it right now. But are we in 2009, and then we're going to remember 2021 and said, we just didn't do as much as we could? Cristina, Lorella, Erika.
I didn't catch the last part of your question, Jorge. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, that maybe this, you said, Lorella, this is the year, right? So are we back when we believe that the government was going to deliver, and we just waited, or should we do something else?
I don't think it's ever been our posture to have a wait and see approach. And I see that the government is a vehicle, right? Like the government is a vehicle to do good. And so our job, like, we do not work for the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. We are accountable to people, and we work to ensure that our policies and our laws in this country can enable people to thrive. That vision includes immigrants. And so I think the beauty about a movement, to your question and to build on Erika's point, is that people and organizations get to play different roles. Now, we should never be confused with one important lesson in all of organizing, like basic 101. Access does not equal power. It does not matter how many meetings you're having or how many conversations you're having, if you are not willing to push and to hold people accountable. And that is absolutely foundational to all of the work that we do, which is why when they rolled out Build Back Better and it didn't include immigrants, and then pretended to suggest that this was historic because it didn't exclude any key constituency in this country in the way that the New Deal excluded many Black workers and farm workers, we held them to account. We held them accountable, and we said, you cannot actually say that if your vision doesn't include immigrants. And so so we pushed, right? So we decided we're going to have an inside approach and an outside approach, Jorge. And we found our way, we've built our way into the plan. And I don't believe it could have happened without the inside and outside. Now, there also come moments of choice. And what we saw happen in the last week alone is many of the advocates, particularly people working with Erika and others on asylum and border issues, they've decided, you know what, we're just not going to be a part of this until you actually show that you have a commitment to shifting course on Title 42 and MPP. We're simply going to disengage on this until you're serious. And so I do think that we face moments of choice all over again, time and time again in the movement. And it's quite dynamic. It's iterative. Like, there is no, here's the path, like how you get from A to Z. You know, you have to kind of assess as you go every day, and you have to interrogate our assumptions. And so I do feel like we're definitely not in a wait and see posture. I think people right now are re-examining their relationship to power, and they're making decisions accordingly. I believe deeply that we are not done with legislation right now, because the Build Back Better agenda has not finished its course in the Senate, in the House, or in the Senate. And I, along with many people, many of our partners at Community Change and the Firm Network, with United We Dream, with the National Domestic Workers Alliance, the United Farm Workers, with Labor and SEIU, we all believe it can get done, and it has to get done this year.
Cristina, so
if I can just, I'm sorry,
go ahead,
just to jump in also real quick, and we can also remember, right, that legislation is look, if we get a path to citizenship for people, and we're able to get some sort of relief through Congress, that is what we want right now. And also, there's so much that the president can do in this moment without Congress to stop deportations, right? Like, we cannot take our sight off of that. He promised he was going to end private detention centers. Guess what? They're growing, right? He said he was going to stop deportations. Guess what? We have thousands and thousands of Haitian migrants that are flying out of this country in deportation flights every single day. So I just wanted to also make that plug that as the president, yes, he has a lot of influence over Congress, and he can lead if he wanted to. And also, his administration right now has the power to do so much. And I would hope that we have somebody in that administration that is as passionate as Steve Miller was to attack us, as they are to ensure that we have everything in this country in terms of policy to protect immigrants. I would hope that we have somebody in there that can actually do what he was doing, but to protect us.
Yeah, and Cristina, what I was going to say is that, are you concerned that maybe we're losing the momentum? I saw the numbers a few months ago. 38% of Latinos voted for Trump in the last election, regardless of his racist statements, regardless of his policies. 38% voted for him, and we haven't been able to do anything for almost 10 million since 1986. So if it doesn't happen now, then it might never happen. That's a concern.
Jorge, I share your concern, and I will say that, I definitely don't want to be the all negative speaker here, but I will raise something that I think it should be really concerning for all of us who are part of this country. And that is that if you zoom out and we put immigration a little bit to the side, we are in a very important moment of choice in this country, because what we saw under the Trump administration wasn't just a white nationalist government. This was a government really trying to build an authoritarian regime. And I think that we need to call it for what it is. And, the country voted clearly against wanting an authoritarian regime. And if you look at authoritarian regimes across the globe, immigration is one of the central pillars. Demonizing immigrants, targeting immigrants and refugees is one of the central pillars for a lot of these regimes to build power and to take control over countries. So if the Democratic Party doesn't acknowledge that truth, I think we're in a big problem. If they don't think of immigration as a central issue to save our democracy, to save our country, we're in a big problem. And let's be real, right now, immigration is not the only issue that is struggling in Congress. We have two Democrats, Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, who are holding back the entire package that the president promised. The Build Back Better agenda, which would include immigration, but would also include care, childcare, Medicare, all of the issues that Latinos and Latinas across the country care about. I mean, this is the agenda that will actually support working class families, majority of them people of color in this country, again, beyond immigration. So if the Democratic Party does not deliver, not just on immigration, but on all of these other issues, I think we are in big trouble, and is giving the Republican Party a huge opportunity. The right wing, white nationalists and supremacists who we saw what happened in January 6th, who are building power, and these movements are real, I think is really giving them an opportunity to build more power. So the urgency that I want to, lift up with the audience and everyone that has joined us today is that we are in a critical moment. It's not just about immigration. It's about the future of the country. And we need to push those that we have elected. And, all of us here who are speaking here, Jorge, we did everything we could to make sure that Trump was defeated in the last election. We mobilized people, we knocked on doors despite COVID, we called on people, and our people turned out to vote. So if we have nothing to show when we get to the 22 elections or when we get to the 2024 elections, we are going to have a very difficult time mobilizing communities, but also we will be in trouble in terms of saving our country and our democracy.
All right, so we've been talking for about 45 minutes. I have a few questions, and then at the end, I'm going to ask you again for final thoughts and to answer the question, what can the president do? So you'll have a chance to give us your solution at the end. So let me read some of the questions, short answers, please. So, okay, first question from the audience. Here it is. Will Biden's immigration policy, including keeping a lot of Trump's border policy, help or hurt the Democratic Party in midterm elections? It's up to you.
Erika, you should go.
Yep.
Look, we have to stop with this thinking, and by we, honestly, it is Democrats. needs to start with is to stop thinking that by being, I think this ties into what Cristina was saying, that by being pro-immigrant, you're gonna lose people, right? The fact is that there's so many people who support immigration reform. If you poll people across the country, there's been endless polls of people who support DACA recipients and stop to deportations. I mean, you name it. But we need results. We need something to show our folks so they can turn out, right? Trump had everything he could to give to his people. Here, look at all the things that I'm doing. They're terrible, they're evil, but I'm delivering. Look at the whatever things I did on immigration. What are we going to be showing our folks so they can actually feel like they can go to the ballot box and feel excited to get their family members to go with them and to actually turn the country around in places that are very important? And we haven't been able to do that, right? And the fact is that when a lot of Democrats were campaigning in several years, several years ago, or even just recently, guess what they use? DACA, right? We did DACA. Look at the Dreamers. Look at all of this. And that's one thing that we can show that the president, and President Obama did back in the day. Now let's show something new. And that's what our people need. They need hope, and they need to see that Democrats are actually doing what they promised to do instead of hiding away and fearing the Trump base, because we have so many people who need to be pushed to go to the ballot and actually vote. And they need motivation. We have nothing to motivate them right now with.
Okay, Erika, gracias. Lorella, the next question is for you. How do you answer the argument that if Democrats overrule the parliamentarian, it will set a precedent that could be used against them later?
I think this is a similar argument that people raise on filibuster reform. And here's the thing. Democrats are in power right now. That power, that majority, is absolutely not guaranteed next year or 2024 and beyond, because we actually have structural challenges that make our Senate and our entire political system, like the foundation of so much of that is actually racist. And it comes from our history as a country, and we should own that. And so my top line here is you have to use the power that you have when you have it. And if you are elected, just to build on Erika's point, you were elected for a reason. You now have to deliver on the economy, on jobs, on climate, on care, and on immigration, because you do not know if you're going to have power down the road. So I am not afraid of going all in right now, because it is our job and our duty to deliver for people while we have power.
Okay. I'm going to be asking you, Lorella, in just a second about, there are a couple of questions about Plan C, or the so-called third proposal. But Cristina, first a question for you. I was reading this morning in the Washington Post. So far this year, 1.7 million people have been detained at the border, more than any time since 1996. And the question is, what's the best argument against the claim that a path to citizenship will lead to more people arriving at the border?
I think I want to build on a little bit of what Lorella said here for this question, because I think that it's really at the center of what we need to wrap up with our conversation about immigration. I think, first of all, our entire country and all of our systems and policies, including the immigration system, have been shaped by a legacy of slavery and white supremacy that started with the founding of this country. And if we accept that as the truth, and accept the fact that the immigration system and the immigration narrative that we have, the fact that immigrants are criminals, immigrants are job takers, we have, immigrants are illegals. All of these sound bites have been very deliberate in building an anti-immigrant and racist narrative that has worked together with the system, with the immigration system, to keep poor and working class people out of this country. That is the system that we have today. So this is why we can't have a real conversation about the fact that we are in a phenomenon of global migration because of climate crisis, because of foreign policies of many countries, and also because of US intervention. taking Haiti as an example, all of the interventions that the US has played in destabilizing the country has also, in addition to climate disasters, has pushed out many Haitians to leave their home. And so if we really want to transform the immigration about conversation, I think that we first have to confront that this is the country who we are, and this is the legacy that we're grappling with. And to really start speaking from a place of, I will say a friend of mine, Deepak Bhargava, is now really introducing this conversation about what is the moral and political obligation of the US when this country's policies have pushed out people from their own homes. And it's almost like a conversation about reparations. What is our duty to those people? I mean, the same way in which we've talked about people from Afghanistan, the same way we have to think about the intervention and the role that the US played in Central America and the Civil War. And in other parts of the Western Hemisphere, South America, et cetera, just as an example. And I think the second thing that we have to speak about is the reality of climate change and the fact that climate refugees will continue to grow. So we, as the country that wants to be and live up to the ideals of freedom and liberty and justice, I think we have a moral responsibility to be a leader in the world, to welcome immigrants, to treat immigrants as human beings, and to really grapple with solutions about the problems that this country has created too.
I just build on that quickly, Jorge. I know there are a lot of questions coming in, but I don't believe that there is like a gray area here. Like you're either pro-immigrant and like pro-multiracial democracy, or you're not. And I think that's just like, it's just that simple, right? Like I think about how clear, Erika, to your point, Stephen Miller was when he got to the White House, and how he used every lever, every regulatory maneuver to advance his agenda. And so I do feel like part of the challenge that we have had in the immigrant justice movement is because we're still solving for the situation that 11 million people are in. By the way, not because there's a broken system, because the system is working as it was intended. It's not a broken immigration system. It's like performing exactly as it was meant to perform. We have not been able to, we are not having a broader conversation, right? So climate change, the pandemic, the economic despair across the globe, it means that we will continue to see large numbers of people migrating to the United States and other countries that offer potential safety and stability. And so cruel deterrence messages, which is what we're seeing a lot of right now, they're not going to change that reality. So we need to be able to enter into, like, this is what I think next year is really about, entering into the conversation about what it would really take to update our immigration laws. And how do we think about immigration as a racial justice and economic justice issue, not as an afterthought or an add-on to the broader agenda. And only then can we really ground in a liberatory policy and vision for our country.
All right, Erika and Lorella, here is a lot of questions about the Plan C. So here's Lorella, a comment. Personally, they say, I don't want Plan C. I don't want to settle for less. I would like to risk and push for the standalone path to citizenship. And they also ask you if this third proposal to the parliamentarian, does it protect young people who do not qualify for DACA?
So I don't know all of the final details of Plan C, but I understand it to be, it will be a temporary status that will have a work permit. And it would give people protection from deportation. It will give people the ability to apply for advanced parole and travel abroad. And it will come with eligibility for some federal and state public benefits, including the ACA, also known as Obamacare. I don't think that this is enough. I want to just ground in that. It is not what we have fought for. It is not what we're here for. And also, I think in the next few weeks, we will have moments of choice as a movement. So I am for continuing to push at the outer edge of the possible on a path to citizenship. It is what we deserve. It is what our communities deserve. It is what I want my sister to have, and what I want your brother to have, Cristina, and your family, Erika. And also, I think we will have to I think it'll come down to making sure that we continue to do everything we can on the outside and on the inside to press for it, and then to count whether or not we can hold the vote. Because ultimately we're gonna have to grapple with choices of, can we deliver something short of what we came here for? Maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the question is, can we actually lock in 50 votes for a path to citizenship by sidestepping the parliamentarian? I think all of those options are on the table, and I don't think it is appropriate for us right now to foreclose any door. Like, I don't want to be foreclosing doors before we have to. I want to act. I want us to be strategic and to have all the information to ground in our power, to fight for and push for what we deserve, which is a path to citizenship, and to continue to build our power and to test what's possible in the next few weeks.
Erika, do you sense that the president is on your side? That the vice president is on your side?
I mean, that's said to my understanding, but as I had mentioned before in my previous point, that there is a difference between lip service and actual leadership. I can assure you that if President Biden wanted to and actually focused a lot of his attention, because I know there's a lot of issues in this country that we will care about, but if there was actually the attention to this issue that it deserves, that just a few calls would help. I can tell you that. I mean, maybe I'm oversimplifying this, right? But what I'm trying to say is that there needs to be the willingness to actually move this. And I don't think that they have done everything in their power right now, and their influence that they do have as a president, and the vice president right now, Biden and Kamala Harris, to ensure that their party in Congress is actually pushing and using every single tool that they have. They have several tools to make it happen. The last thing I'll say is that, I think it's also important for us to think about, the fact that we are going to have to make choices, and that a lot of choices have been really hard for many, many years for us. And the fact is that we did have to sit down and make a choice when we started fighting for DACA. And it was the hardest. I don't know if Cristina and Lorella remember this, but we had a whole conference of United We Dream back then, like talking about, like, do we let go of the DREAM Act fight? Do we not? And it was so hard, but we thought it was strategic at the moment to do that. And we were able to win something for our communities. And so whatever it is that we're going to be able to win this time around, we're not going to stop. Here we are years later, and we're going to continue to fight the next day. Whatever it is that we win, we will continue to fight. This is I'm ready to be 60-year-old Erika fighting for immigrant rights. Hopefully that doesn't have to happen, but I'm ready for it.
All right, I have 6 minutes. So I'm going to ask each of you just to take 2 minutes, give us your final thoughts. What can the president do? Cristina, you begin.
The president immediately can end detention, deportations, get rid of the Remain in Mexico program and Title 42, and I think that will be a good start.
Okay, Lorella?
Not going to repeat what Cristina said, but he can make sure to work with Democratic leadership to ensure that we deliver green cards for people this year, to make sure that if that's not on the table, we deliver significant protections for people and the ability to travel. And I said I was not going to repeat what you said, Cristina, so I'm going to toss to Erika.
Okay, Erika, final word.
I mean, he can do all of that, and I'm just going to sound like a broken record, but actually focus on this issue. We need him on this issue. We need him to be a leader on immigration. If he doesn't want another crazy politician like Donald Trump to come and make it even worse for our communities. So we need him as a leader. We need him as a champion. I don't think he is that right now, and I hope he can be that in the next several months that we have right now to fight for what we can get.
Finally, let me just end by saying, when I first arrived in this country in 1983, there were only 15 million Latinos. Right now, we're more than 60. And I think we've gone from big numbers to power. And what I'm seeing here is 3 very powerful Latinas. And we need your voices, and we really appreciate your voices. Muchas gracias a las 3, de verdad.
A ti también, gracias.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Gabriela?
Gracias. Thank you so much. I think Ahilan and Hiroshi want to join us to say thank you to all of you. We really appreciate your insight, your courage, and we're following. So thank you so much. Ahilan?
I just want to thank all of you. Thank you, Jorge, Lorella, Cristina, Erika. It's just a really remarkable conversation. I do feel it's such a complicated and difficult moment that we're in now. And I feel like I have so many ideas and thoughts about how to try to navigate it more from this conversation. So thank you all so much for this. We really, really appreciate it.
And I just want to add my thanks, Jorge, Erika, Lorella, Cristina. I mean, this has been such a thought-provoking and really challenging conversation. You've asked really hard questions and starting to grapple with them. And but I come away with, I suppose it's the blend of hope and pragmatism that really allows rethinking and really leads to change. And this is thanks you for the audience for all of your attention and your active engagement. Not just in the session, but with crucial issues like this every single day. Just want to point out this is the first of several events that make up this conference. It's the road ahead in immigration law. What can the president do? And not just what the president can do alone, but also how the president can influence the legislative process in Congress, which, as we've talked about, continues. So we're going to have those sessions on Friday morning and Friday midday. And that's been dropped into the chat, the links. So again, I just want to thank everyone who's taken part in the conversation today. We're so privileged, so grateful, and so blessed to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Gracias a todos. Hasta luego.
Gracias.
See you all on Friday.